Guys, it's Matthew here once again, and for the past couple of days I have been playing a MF Windripper Inquisitor just to get some rarity going, whose journey was sadly cut short due to a freak Varling accident that was rather unpreventable, unforeseeable, completely out of my hands. Don't know how it happened. For the record, I've bricked something like 10 out of 11 six links. I'm just not terribly lucky with Varlobs. I was feeling a bit of tilt at this stage and thought, screw it. If it gets something good, then I'll keep going. If it doesn't, we'll move on. Now, the MF Windripper by itself was actually going pretty well. We were finding quite a lot of items, a lot of uniques, but I just didn't play it for very long. I, for whatever reason, wasn't too attached to this character or the idea of MF. I just thought I'd give it a go, and overall, I think you really have to play it for the long term, for magic find, rarity, quantity, whatever you want to call it, to actually be worth playing and worth your time. I did, however, find a few decent items here or there, quite a few uniques. Just about every single boss would drop at least a unique. Most maps would drop multiple uniques. I didn't quite get anything super good that would pay out, but by level 82 you can't really expect to. However, the character did perform pretty well in its DPS and ability to clear just about everything I threw at it up until about level 75 maps, something like that. Did take care of its Zeri at level 68 with very garbage gear, and that is largely because Frostwall Lightning Arrow abuse is still absolutely ridiculous. I had junk gear at that point, something like 15k lightning arrow DPS, but that's still enough to one-shot everything in its Zeri, and it was a very comfortable run overall. The finding of loot and all the rares is quite fun, but overall fairly tedious to pick stuff up, and you've really got to kind of have a love for the sort of system that has been set up for rarity and quantity, and personally it's just not for me. You do slow down your clear speed a bit, especially your movement speed, since a lot of the uniques force you to sacrifice movement speed, attack speed, damage, all that sort of junk, and that's commonly why people play things like caustic arrow, poison arrow, for their magic finding, because you don't really sacrifice too much DPS there, because there's only so much DPS you can get from gear on caustic arrow anyway, as well as a few other options for MF. So Windripper Inquisitor here, while it did perform strong and had great DPS, survivability, all of that, especially once you get to, say, level 90, that's roughly when you fill out all your passives. The problem was it just didn't play very smooth for me, because the attack speed was kind of meh, and so was just the crit chance wasn't all that great. It was okay, and with Diamond Flask it was fine. The movement speed was pretty junk, and the fact that you need Val Pact in the end to not one-shot yourself to reflect, even with the extremely nerfed DPS I was doing compared to a real Inquisitor, it just meant you had no life regen, and would sometimes cause some pretty uncomfortable playstyle, especially if you want to run Blood Rage to make up some of that attack speed through attack speed from Blood Rage and Frenzy charges. But we did find a lot of loot, and some of these were quite worth running. Now, something else I took part in was a monstrous treasure map that was rolled with quite a high amount of quantity. All the boxes were rolled pretty well, and it was just a reef because we were trying to find the new Varanastra divination card, the Formless Sea. Formless Sea? The Formless Sea? Whatever. Point being, it's still really fucking rare, and even when we gave this much of attention to a reef map, we didn't find a single one, so it didn't pay off, but the loot was absolutely crazy. So if you do decide to build a quantity and rarity character, and you farm this sort of stuff long term, or quite a lot, just even a fair amount, let's say 10 of these sorts of maps, it'll probably pay off in the long run. I just didn't particularly have the patience for it myself, and I'd much rather enjoy a nice fast playstyle with strong DPS and just clearing pretty much everything in game, which is kind of what this character was supposed to do. I was hoping with Inquisitor and the combo of Frostwall Lightning Arrow I'd be able to clear everything in the game, but I just didn't find it fun enough, so I kind of cut my journey short with a slight Varlob accident. Something else that this does, though, is absolutely highlight how crazy the game is without a loot filter. Some of you may remember this, prior to loot filters coming into existence, mapping was pretty damn hard, especially in groups when you'd go with 6-player parties. This is kind of what your screen would look like. You'd have to be just scouring through that shit for maps, for any useful sort of loot. And these days we all have loot filters, so it's just removed almost all of the clutter. But you can see that only in a 2-player party here, granted we have MF, quantity, and monstrous treasure with lots of quantity rolled on the map and all that, it's still completely insane and means you essentially have to have a loot filter by the time you get to maps, which isn't really a problem for most of us because chances are we will have a loot filter, but you can understand the plight of a new person joining the game and being pretty overwhelmed by junk on the ground, because, I mean, yeah, 99.99% of this is never going to be needed or picked up or even looked at, and that's thanks to our loot filters. So if you do still want to kind of test out this character yourself, just the concept, I'll go over what my character had, the gear and all that, and maybe you want to play it yourself. It wasn't quite for me personally. I might try out Caustic Arrow in the future with a more MF based mindset as well, but here's the character anyway. To level 82 as a Templar Inquisitor. As I said, one of the problems with the Inquisitor tree for a bow character or for most attack based builds is just the sheer travel. You start over here and you go everywhere. You do end up hitting a good amount of life, a good amount of crit, some leech. I had to take a 30 int node because MF gear just doesn't really give you the freedom to skip out on int from the tree, since you can't make it up from other things like jewelry. But yeah, it gets pretty uncomfortable. You have to grab all the bow nodes. You absolutely need Pact in the end. And it just, yeah, you also miss out on a lot of cool things. In the end, I will show you the full tree, but you do fill out quite a lot of life, and it ends up being about 170%. The build is fine by the time it gets to level 90. Right now, it's just a bit of a struggle as well. As well as that, we need the Pierce too, so that's extra points you will be investing. Now, the Wind Ripper no longer exists, but I was running a 5-link, and the 5-link was mostly Lightning Arrow, Pierce, GMP, and Wed. Beyond that, I had faster attacks most of the time, but once Added Cold got high enough, Added Cold went in the setup, and that's just so I could shatter much more reliably and freeze things pretty much permanently. As far as the chest goes, I was running a Belly of the Beast, but that's really not necessary. You can wear whatever the hell you want, because even without a belly, you should be able to hit 5k life with the right gear setup. A Rat's Nest is what I bought because it had 12% increased lightning arrow radius, and the purpose of that is the lightning arrow itself has an AoE tag. So when you get extra AoE for lightning arrow, that means the chains and the projectiles, when they actually hit something, they will chain from further away. I can't even fucking do this, can I? Yeah, you can't really see anything there, hey. But yeah, when you throw out all your projectiles, if it hits a monster and the frost wall, when you pierce straight through it, it'll chain back and forth further away, so if a target is standing right in the middle, it'll have a greater range to chain from your projectiles. So the more AoE you get, the more reliable all of your chains will be, and it is somewhat useful. So 12% lightning arrow radius there is not completely wasted, and I did have these nodes here as well for quite a long time until I had to respec for Pact. Wind Ripper's absolutely cheap and pretty much free at the moment, but yeah, mine's kind of just a shiny skin, and it does look pretty cool too. I was running face breaks for a long time until I swapped into Sedima's Touch because they have 15% increased quantity. I didn't feel like I needed the damage from face breakers anymore, so I went with these and got quantity. Had to run Gold Worms for the 20% quantity. As I mentioned, movement speed sucks balls on these, so you're missing 20% right there. If you end up wanting to run a Greed's Embrace, you're losing another 20%. That's the Magicfinding Rarity chest. Besides that, I didn't really go for too much rarity. I had a fairly good neck that I bought for 40 chaos, and I ran a belt with some life and wed, and a quiver with some crit, life, whatever. Most of my rarity then was coming from two really nicely rolled Ventor's Gambles, here and here, And if you're going to try and look for some for yourself, what you're mostly looking for is really high quantity rolls and a pretty high rarity roll. Anything else on top of that is just going to cost more and more currency, and it's kind of a luxury for your rarity character. But what makes really expensive Ventors is the rarity and quantity rolls on them. If they don't have that, then they're kind of just a regular ass ring, and why are you bothering, right? So it's kind of a dumb concept. You have to spend a lot to make a rarity character to then find stuff. So, I don't know. It's only worth it if you really want to go ham and find lots of shit. I was also running the rarity gem. In the end, I think I had, let's see, 223 rarity and 70 quantity. So I went mostly for quantity and still had a fair chunk of rarity. The rarity gem was what I used in the 6th link for the Wind Ripper, and I relied on the shatter and shock from the Wind Ripper for extra rarity and quantity. That's about all I'll say about the character. Feel free to try it yourself if you want. I didn't really enjoy it too much, but maybe that's just my own problem. Largely because of the playstyle, largely because of Varpact, and how much travelling you need on the tree. I will mention static electricity here goes a long way. It's quite a lot of damage, 1 to 82. That's all I've got for Magicfinding Rarity. It was the first time I've ever tried it. I might try another one in the form of a caustic arrow build, maybe a bit down the track. That's all I got for this one. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you next time.